At the retirement picnic I hosted, they gave out personalized hats to everyone. Mine read, "Biggest letdown." I didn't say a word. I smiled, reached into my tote bag, pulled out a thick envelope and tore it in half. Then I walked away. An hour later the calls started. I wish I could say I was blindsided, that it hit me like a rogue wave on a Florida beach. But truthfully, it felt more like the last puzzle piece clicking into place, one I'd been pretending didn't exist. I stood in the parking lot holding the hat like it weighed 10 pounds. Biggest letdown. Embroidered in bold, navy blue. Nice. My niece Brenda chuckled. "It's just a little joke, Uncle Don," she said, smirking. From across the folding tables, my brother Marty lifted his soda can. "Come on, Donnie. You gotta admit, it's kind of funny." My sister? Silent. My parents? A couple of awkward smiles. Then Mom gave this weird, tinkly laugh like someone just made an off-color joke at a church potluck. Dad gave me that sideways grin, the one he wore when I tripped over my own feet as a kid. I nodded. Fully. Right. Funny. I folded the hat and set it neatly on the table beside the untouched deviled eggs. Nobody noticed my hands were shaking. Or maybe they just didn't care. I had paid for everything. The cabin rental at Lake Lanier, the catering, the matching hats. That was the punchline. They used my credit card to slap a label on me. I'd spent months planning this weekend, hoping nostalgia might thaw some old frost. That maybe, just maybe, I'd feel like part of the family again. Instead, I got embroidered proof of how they really saw me. And the worst part? I wasn't even angry. Just exhausted. A kind of tired that doesn't lift with sleep. I excused myself and headed back to the cabin. My cabin, since I'd rented the entire property. I opened my overnight bag and found the manila folder. Thick. Crisp. Weighted. Inside had been a trust fund document. I'd planned to surprise the family, split it equally among my siblings and their kids. A gift from the quiet uncle who never quite fit. Too late now. They made their choice. And I finally made mine. Before we begin today's story, I want to take a moment to say thank you, from the bottom of my heart. Whether you've been part of this channel from the beginning or just stumbled upon us recently, your presence here means more than you know. Every comment, every like, and every shared memory makes this space feel a little more like family. Now, if you've ever felt like the quiet one in the background, the one who gave and gave hoping someday they'd be seen, you might find a piece of yourself in today's story. It's not just about a reunion gone wrong. It's about legacy. About love, resentment, and the painful weight of being misunderstood. But more than that, it's about standing tall, finally, and realizing your worth doesn't depend on who recognizes it. So settle in, grab your coffee, and if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This is a story you won't want to miss. Let's begin. I had even thought about bringing a bottle of sparkling cider, something special to go with the announcement. Something festive. Instead, I walked back into the lodge dining room and stopped behind my empty seat. No one noticed. They were too busy lining up for a group photo in their matching Reunion 2025 hats. Grinning wide. The hat I left on the table, sitting right there. Still untouched. Perfect. I took out the manila folder. Slid the pages free. And without a word I started tearing them in half. Not in a rush. Slow and steady. One sheet at a time. Brenda turned around first. "Uncle Don? What is that?" she asked. Marty frowned. "Is that some kind of legal doc?" I didn't respond. I kept going, cleanly ripping the next sheet down the middle. My father half rose from his seat, confused. "Don, what are you doing?" I laid the pile of torn papers gently next to my untouched plate. Smiled again, tighter this time. Hope the hats were worth it. Then I turned and walked out. No shouting. No drama. Just my footsteps on the hardwood floor, the whisper of the old screen door closing behind me, and the first breath of cool Georgia air brushing my skin. I didn't bother with my jacket. Didn't need it. I was halfway to the car when my phone buzzed. Then again. Then 3 more times in a row. Like someone had cracked the levee wide open. I didn't answer. Let them read it first. Let them feel the weight of what they'd lost. I sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes without turning the key. Hands on the wheel. Still calm. Almost too calm. Like my emotions hadn't caught up yet. But their laughter, that part stuck. It looped through my mind like a broken record. My family, the people I grew up with, laughing like it was all some charming joke. Like calling me a disappointment was just another part of our quirky family dynamic. As harmless as Brenda's barbed jokes or Marty's digs about me never getting married. But it wasn't harmless. And it never had been. I could trace it back to when I was 9. Marty broke the neighbor's mailbox with a football. I got blamed for not keeping an eye on him. Brenda flunked a spelling test. Somehow I was the bad influence. Every mistake, every mess they tied to me. Even if I wasn't there. 12 I got my first C in math. I cried. Not because of the C but because I knew exactly what came next. The eye rolls at dinner. Mom's long, theatrical sigh. Dad's quiet, tight-lipped disappointment. Meanwhile, Marty could flunk 2 classes and still get a pat on the back and a $100 gas card for effort. At 17 I begged them to co-sign a small student loan. Not money. Just a signature. They said no. Said I needed to learn responsibility. Marty had totaled 2 cars by then. Brenda was already off in California, taking a gap year photography course my parents helped fund. But I was the one who needed a lesson in responsibility. So I worked nights, flipped burgers and stocked grocery shelves. Slept maybe 4 hours a day. I built something from scratch. A mobile tech repair gig at first, then an online service. I taught myself to code, to pitch, to hear no, and keep showing up. I didn't want much. A little acknowledgement would have been nice. Maybe just once, we're proud of you. Instead I became the punchline. The weird one. The latecomer to Thanksgiving who probably fell asleep in some basement coding dungeon. When I landed my first 6-figure investment I didn't tell them. When I paid off my student debt in one wire transfer I didn't tell them. When my company got profiled in a business magazine. Silence. Because I knew if I did tell them, they'd either laugh it off or worse, say they were always rooting for me. Take credit. So I kept quiet. But I watched. Watched Brenda throw wine parties in condos I knew she couldn't afford. Watched Marty post vague quotes about resilience, only to Venmo request me for $200 the next day. Watched Mom and Dad grumble about money, then book a Caribbean cruise for their anniversary. And I helped. Quietly. An anonymous envelope in their mailbox. A rent check paid by a friend of a friend. I still wanted to believe we could be a family. That maybe if I gave enough they'd see me. That dream finally cracked last Christmas. I offered to fly everyone out to a cozy lodge in Colorado. Mom told me not to waste money, and the next day she posted about how Brenda gifted us a holiday to remember. That's when I knew. No more shadows. No more silence. The reunion? That was supposed to be the moment. The reveal. Inside that folder they laughed at? A notarized letter clearing my parents' mortgage. Retirement plan. A down payment for Brenda's next home. A relief fund for Marty. And a referral. If he ever wanted a clean slate. But they'll never read it now. They just saw a hat. Each page was printed on heavy ivory linen stock. I even picked out deep navy folders to match the lodge's table runners. That's how much thought I put into it. I wanted it to be special. Meaningful. I pictured Mom's expression as she unfolded the letter. The tears. The disbelief. Maybe even a little pride. The slow realization that the son she once called all ideas, no direction, had quietly built something worth celebrating. I imagined Dad standing up misty-eyed, offering me his old-school firm handshake. Brenda finally saying, "Uncle Don, I was wrong." Marty letting out a low whistle. Man didn't see that coming. I'd imagined 100 versions of that moment. What I got? A polyester cap with "biggest letdown" embroidered across the front. And I know what you might be thinking, maybe it was just bad humor. Maybe they meant well. But here's the thing, they knew. On some level they always knew. They saw the car I pulled up in. The quality of my blazer. The subtle way conversations shifted when someone recognized my company name. My mother once asked, lightly as if passing the salt, if I was doing okay money-wise. That kind of question you ask when you already know the answer, but you'd rather not acknowledge it out loud. Because they didn't want to be proud. Or maybe they did and hated themselves for it. So they joked. Because it's easier to laugh at the son who made it than admit you had him wrong for 40 years. No. Now they were going to learn what had been in those navy blue folders. And not just them. Everyone. All the neighbors and church friends who heard them talk about poor Dawn, who never quite figured things out. Everyone who assumed I was some quiet recluse fiddling with side projects and startups. They were about to see the truth. But not before the damage started. I hadn't even made it back to Atlanta before it began. My phone buzzed. A buddy I hadn't heard from in months. "Hey man, your niece just posted something odd. Said you had a breakdown at the reunion? Everything okay?" Breakdown. That's the word she chose. I opened Facebook. There was a photo of the reunion table. And the caption? "Some people just can't handle a joke. Hope you're getting the help you need, Uncle D." The hats were still spread out. Wine glasses full. A sheet cake with buttercream roses sat in the middle of the table. The caption under the Facebook photo read, "Some folks just can't handle being part of a family. We still love you even when you self-sabotage." No names. No details. But everyone knew exactly who Brenda meant. The comments came fast. Vague sympathy and tired takes. "So sorry, girl. You deserve peace. You did your best. Some people are just too toxic. Family is complicated. Sending hugs." That alone would have been enough to turn my stomach. But then came the pings. Group chats lighting up. Screenshots flying in from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. My Aunt Carla texted asking if I was okay, said Mom called her in tears, sobbing about how I'd snapped and destroyed legal papers during some kind of episode. Then Marty chimed in. Texted me directly. "You seriously need help, man. You embarrassed everyone. We tried to include you and you made it weird. Real classy, Dawn." Include me? Right. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the scanned copies of the original documents to my attorney. Asked him to timestamp the email chain and preserve everything. Then I looped in my assistant. She replied 5 minutes later. "Would you like me to move the Forbes feature up to this weekend? I can reinsert the scan images." Yes. That. Because here's the thing, I had options. I had records. I had receipts. They had a narrative. A flimsy one. But if there's one thing my family's always been good at, it's rewriting history fast. Not this time. I wasn't going to let them paint me as the unstable uncle, while they swept decades of favoritism and manipulation under the rug. So I started quietly. No tags. No comments. I just posted the Forbes article link. The headline read, "The Quiet Millionaire, How One Tech Founder Funded His Family's Life in Secret," then walked away. Inside were photos of the very documents I'd torn in half at the reunion. Signed. Dated. The article detailed the company valuation, just north of $30 million, and revealed the anonymous donations traced back to me. It included mortgage payoffs, college funds, even the medical debt I'd cleared for an uncle who once said I'd never amount to much. Let the world see it now. No more hiding. The article also mentioned the mentorship program I'd launched 6 months earlier, focused on young people who'd been overlooked or dismissed by their own families. It didn't dwell on my decision to cut ties. Just explained it. Not with bitterness. With clarity. By midday my inbox had exploded. First came the congratulations, from colleagues, former classmates, even strangers. Then came the apologies. Then came the panic. A voicemail from Brenda. "Why would you post something like that? You're humiliating us." A text from Marty. "Wow. Real mature. Hope you're happy dragging the family through the mud for clicks." The mom. "We need to talk. You totally misunderstood. The hat was just a joke, Donnie. We were having fun." Misunderstood. A joke. The same excuse they always used, wrapped in guilt and sugar. It would have been funny if it weren't so familiar. But it wasn't over. Because the story was gaining traction. The spotlight I never wanted. It was getting hotter. A tech-focused YouTube channel picked up the Forbes article. Then a popular podcast. Then a mini-documentary on family estrangement and generational gaslighting. Comments poured in. And people took sides. But mostly they took mine. Because people recognize humiliation, especially when it wears a forced smile and calls it self-love. Marty tried clapping back on Facebook, calling me unstable and self-absorbed. Claimed I was spinning things for attention. Didn't go well. Someone replied with a screenshot of the contract I drafted for him last year, complete with margin notes and a payment timeline. Time-stamped. Signed. Someone else dug up an old post where Brenda bragged about being the golden child of the family. That one started circulating with laughing emojis and side eyes. A well-known tech influencer reposted the article with the caption, "Let this be a reminder. Not every black sheep is lost. Some are just done with wolves in sweaters. They thought they could discredit me, smear my name, make me look like the problem. But I didn't need to defend myself. I had something better. Receipts. No. I had the world watching. You'd think that after the article, after the backlash, after the unraveling of their tidy little tale, they'd back off. But they didn't. If anything, they doubled down. Marty went on a rant about me being emotionally volatile and attention-seeking. He said I had a history of being dramatic. Funny. That's not how the bank viewed me when I wrote him a check. Marty said I was always the one who felt left out, even when they tried their best. Brenda kicked off her damage control tour with extended family. She told folks I wasn't well. That I'd let success go to my head. That I didn't walk away over a stupid hat. But because I was always looking for a reason to disappear. As for Mom and Dad, they stayed quiet in public. But I knew better. They were making calls. Working the back channels. Telling cousins and family friends it was all a misunderstanding. A sad situation. That I had simply taken things the wrong way. I watched as they tried to rebuild their version of the story. But this time, it wasn't sticking. Because the people they were calling, a lot of them had already reached out to me. Quietly. A cousin messaged me on LinkedIn. Said she'd always noticed how I was treated differently growing up. A neighbor I hadn't heard from in decades emailed to say she remembered my mom calling me a late bloomer, while raving about Marty's college internship, at a company I now held equity in. The part that hit hardest? Wasn't their spin. It was realizing how long I'd been waiting for them to change, without realizing I already had. I wasn't that kid anymore. The one begging to belong. Hoping they'd finally say, "We're proud of you." I had built something. Something solid. And for the first time I understood, I had my own table now. And that silence, that moment of truth, it felt like peace. For the first time in years. Then came the letter. Not an apology. Not really. Just a carefully worded, "We're still your family and we love you and hope you can move past this." Move past it. Like it was a rough patch. A misunderstanding. Like I'd just taken it the wrong way. I didn't reply. A week later a second letter arrived. Longer. More emotional. It listed things they'd done for me. Meals. Rides. A roof. Like survival was affection. Like that erased decades of mockery and silence. No mention of the money. Or the labels. Or how quickly they threw me under the bus when I stopped smiling through it. Then Marty posted a photo of us as kids. Captioned, "Miss my brother. Still love him. Always will." I got tagged. A lot. But the only people I owed anything to were the ones who showed up when I had nothing. And none of them were wearing matching hats. So I stayed quiet. And in that silence, things kept shifting. Brenda's husband left. She'd gone all in on the "we're victims of cancel culture" angle, spinning it at every barbecue and church potluck, and he'd finally had enough. Took the kids. Moved in with his sister over in Savannah. I didn't hear it from her. Found out through a friend of a friend. Marty lost a speaking spot at some leadership retreat he'd signed himself up for. Apparently, someone sent the organizer the full Forbes article, along with a time-stamped podcast clip of him joking that, "My brother never finishes anything he starts." My parents? They tried refinancing the house. Didn't go through. A buddy of mine who works in finance said the bank flagged it for instability. Their income had changed. Their story didn't add up. I didn't sabotage it. Not directly. But I did stop the monthly transfer. That part, that was me. And I started living my life, not for revenge but finally, freely. I traveled without checking my phone every hour. I made choices without wondering if they'd finally notice or be proud. I built new ventures because I loved building, not to prove anything anymore. Then one quiet evening months later, a message came in from someone I didn't know. Just one sentence. "Thank you for showing people like me it's okay to walk away." That one got to me. Not because I needed the praise, but because it reminded me, walking away isn't selfish. It's survival. A choice. Not a failure. I was never angry that they didn't love me how I needed. I was angry that they pretended they did, while tearing me down every time I stood a little taller. That night I found a box I'd nearly forgotten. Inside were backup copies of the original documents. The ones I tore up. I ran my hand across the parchment, cream-colored, thick. Still crisp where the originals had been torn. But this time it didn't feel like loss. It felt like closure. I don't know where they are now. People still send updates sometimes. I delete them before I finish reading. Not because I don't care, but because the version of me who needed their approval, he's gone. And he's not coming back. Update, 2 years later. I got invited to a wedding recently. Not family, a friend. One of the rare few who saw the worst and stuck around. At the reception, someone introduced me to their cousin. She smiled, shook my hand and said, "Wait, are you the t-shirt guy?" I laughed. Actually laughed. "Yeah," I said. "Guess I am." He told me she cut off her parents last year. Said my story gave her the courage to do it. I didn't know what to say. Still don't. But it stuck with me. Because for so long I thought walking away meant giving up. Turns out, it was the first time I ever stood up for myself. Sometimes I wonder if they still talk about me. If they miss me. Or just miss who they could control. I don't reach out. They don't either. Maybe that says everything. Did I go too far? Or not far enough? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe.